What is going on, guys? Jason Burke here, Styles Clash for Life, coming at you on YouTube, and today I've got another edition of The Drive-In, where I watch recently released films and tell you guys whether they're worth watching, worth waiting for, or worth skipping altogether. Today I've got another 2022 horror film release in theaters. Good to get back to the theater and see this one in person. One that I think is going to fly under the radar for most fans by the end of this year, but I will tell you, I think it's going to wind up, it currently is and may end the year, in my top 5 horror films of 2022. It is one that I want people to go see, and it is 2022's The Invitation. It just came out today. This is opening day, and I really hope it does well because it's a lot of fun. Let me tell you why. This film is written by Jessica M. Thompson and Blair Butler, and directed by Jessica M. Thompson. And this is, from all accounts that I saw online, I looked up her filmography, and I saw, aside from shorts, this is really her second movie that she's done. She's worked on a TV show, and she's done a film called The Light of the Moon, which I am now kind of curious to check out. But this is only her second feature, and I think her first horror feature. So excited to see what Jessica M. Thompson does in the future. And Blair Butler I also don't know much about, but she co-wrote this film as well. Starring Natalie Emmanuel as Evie, and Thomas Doherty as Walter. Natalie Emmanuel is part of the Fast and Furious series, and also worked on Maze Runner. Really good to see her. That's one of the first notes that I have, is Final Girl, so to speak. This main character has a lot of positive things going for her, a good backstory, good dialogue and verbiage, but I will get there as we go. The first positive note I have about this film: it runs an hour and 44 minutes, and it's pretty well paced. They do spend the first half building to kind of what's going on, but they don't lose sight of the character building, and they don't lose sight of the terror. There are some jump scares in this film, but they are used sparingly, and I appreciate the way they're used. The first half of this film takes the time to show relationships, and uses dialogue and personal connections to kind of make you feel like you know Evie. Evie is the every person. She's the sarcastic, charming, beautiful but equally unaware, witty, kind of hard-shelled person with a heart of gold. And you see this trope a lot, but you don't always see it as layered or as convincing on screen as what Natalie Emmanuel did here for Evie. And I feel like the first half of the film, again, it does take time to build, but I would not call it a slow burn by any means, because it's an hour and 45, but it goes by fast. It is well-paced. And in the first half, you're getting kind of the reason why things are being set up, and you're waiting for something to happen, but it's not as if you're kind of checking your watch. You know something's going to explode, you just don't know when, but in the meantime, you're getting connected and invested in these main characters, where they are focusing on a few certain people, the ones they want you to love and hate, and they do use certain jump scares, certain lighting techniques, certain sound design, but it's done in such a way that doesn't feel like it's at the expense of the characters. Part of the reason why I'm not a big fan of the James Wan stuff, the Conjuring universe, the Insidious, the Nun, the stuff like that, is because I feel like they use jump scares as their only real story device, and you lose a lot of plot and you lose a lot of connection to characters who are kind of one-dimensional. So the jump scares feel like they're used too often and they're kind of cheap. The jump scares in this film are used in such a way that make you jump and then go on to the next thing, which does not sacrifice story or character, and they also find a way to protect the villain. The antagonists in this film, when they're shown on screen, especially the stuff that requires makeup and stuff like that, are shown just enough to scare you and make you go, ooh, what is that? While not overexposing your villain, because if you overexpose your villain, they're not scary anymore, and you're seeing through the makeup and through the CGI. They use the villains in really brief, quick, dark-lit techniques that really make you kind of go, ooh, I wonder what the story behind this is. And it's really done well. And like I said, just because the first half is building and the second half is the action, you still got plenty of action in the first half. And they take the time for you to get to know Evie and her journey, which I really enjoy. There's a lot of familial connections, there's a lot of personal hurt that you see, and it comes across really well with her. Another thing I have here is sound design. I talk a lot about sound design on this channel. I think good sound is really integral to horror films, especially when you're going to see films in theaters like I saw this just now. Really like the sound design for this. I feel like there's bubbling undertones of sound the entire time. The whole hour and 45, it feels like there's chords and there's rumblings underneath and there's music and there's all this different stuff, but it never overshadows the characters. When there's moments of dialogue and when there's need to be silent, they use those things very well. But in between, when they're trying to connect you with different visuals and take you through this location kind of maze, they use the striking sound and the violin chords and the underneath rumblings and all the stuff that good sound design does to make you feel like you're in the atmosphere as well. Which leads me to my next positive point, and that is the location. You guys know that I love locations. Another thing that I always ballyhoo about when I enjoy a horror film is a good location, and this has that big, wide Victorian mansion, ancient but also creaky floorboards, darkly lit, basements, like long hallway shots, stuff like that. Really, really enjoyed this location. You want a feeling of seclusion, and they give it to you here. My comparisons for this film, there's two and one looms large. My comparisons of this film to previous films are Ready or Not and True Blood. I think Ready or Not meets True Blood is kind of where I put this film. And again, these are not spoilers. This is a spoiler-free review until the end if I decide to get into it, but I just came out, so keeping it spoiler-free, and if I do go into spoilers, I will warn you guys ahead of time. But I think especially Ready or Not, there's definitely undertones of other films in here, but Ready or Not meets kind of a Guillermo del Toro style, I think, works here really well. There's a lot in common with Ready or Not, and that was one of my top films of last year, or whatever year it came out. 2020 now? Time's flying by. But really enjoyed Ready or Not, really enjoyed the same premise here in a lot of ways. And again, they use this, anytime you kind of get into the Victorian style with the big drafty mansions and the English accents, I kind of tend to lose interest a lot. Just something about the dialect and the pacing of films that are set in those old mansions tends to be a slog to me. This was not. This absolutely nailed the pacing and nailed the characters, and that those accents and the Victorian set pieces and the props, a lot of them are used again, so you get a good use of props here. And a lot of them set up really good camera shots. And that leads me into my next positive point, is some of the cinematography they used. They didn't do much of anything to really differentiate themselves in cinematography. There's nothing revolutionary here. There's no super long shots or like long winding dollies or any kind of upside down stuff. You don't get crazy visuals in this, but everything is shot crisply. Everything feels like it leads seamlessly from one to another. You've got some dream sequences, you've got some indoor-outdoor stuff. Everything they use, and once again, like I said before with the villains, when they show the villains, it is shot really carefully and really well so that you know what your antagonist kind of is, but not enough to be desensitized to it, if that makes any sense. The sound, the camera, the acting, the coloring, the location all play together in this, okay, I know this is going to explode, but I don't know when, and I'm tense the entire time, and I feel for this character, so that whenever the second half of the film does explode, you're along for the ride. And that's a really, really positive thing. Like I said before, I'm going to reiterate the point of dialogue / final girl. Evie is really good. I'm going to be watching out for Natalie Emmanuel because I really, really enjoyed her here. I mean, all the acting is good. Thomas Doherty and the others did a very nice job. The butler from Gotham was in here as well. Alfred from Gotham was in here. I don't know his name. He's phenomenal as well. All the acting is really good. There's no letdowns in this cast, but Natalie Emmanuel is a powerhouse. She is a force, and while I'm not ready to put her on my Samara Weaving top-level New Age final girl list just yet, she's really, really good, and she just has such a likability and such a charm, and the camera just loves her, and you got that sassiness mixed in with the vulnerability, and it's such a nice dichotomy that I really enjoy Butler and Thompson's script here, and Thompson's direction, I think, plays really well into this film. The dialogue felt supernatural. Not supernatural, but very supernatural. Really enjoyed the dialogue. Anytime you see Natalie Emmanuel bonding with somebody, whether it's the love interest, whether it's the best friend, whether it's the snooty, stuck-up staff of this place, you get a lot of really good quips. Everything, the dialogue is paced well. It feels natural. It's funny, but it doesn't distract from the nervousness and the tension of the situation. It's very well-written dialogue, and that's super underrated for a good horror film. Sparing gore. Sparing gore is another note that I had. They use some gore in this film, especially in the final act, but it is done sparingly. You don't get straight-on shots. You don't get long shots of the gore. You get some gore when you need it, and it feels more effective this way. It is not a gore fest. You don't get a whole lot of violence. You don't get a lot of long shots. You do get some cutaways. But when you do see the gore, it resonates more because there are certain characters you want to see become gory. So they use it in such a way that leaves you wanting more, but doesn't make you feel cheated, if that makes any sense. Now for a couple of negatives to close out here. Predictability. I think the trailer showed a little bit too much if you've seen the trailer, and I think kind of the movie sets up for some obvious twists that I guessed right away. There are one or two extra little things that I didn't guess, a couple little layers and nuances to the twist that I did not guess, which was nice. But I did guess a vast majority of what was going on from right away. I guessed it in the trailer. I guessed it as the film set it up. I had forgotten the trailer when I came in to see the movie, and I guessed it again. So there is predictability in this film, but I kind of like the charm of it not being too pretentious. I mean, nowadays we have the A24 elevated horror trying to be know-it-all kind of to an extent, and there's sometimes when it feels very original and it works very, very well, and other times when it kind of hits you over the head with the fact that it's too smart for its own good, and I don't like that. So sometimes the elevated horror can be a little bit too smack you in the face with how intelligent it is, and I think this film embraces what it is. There's moments of silliness, there's a lot of seriousness, but there's some old tropes. This falls very heavily into one particular subgenre of horror. I'm not going to spoil it, and it's very obvious to what it is. But when we get it, though, it's still a fun ride. It doesn't feel like the predictability is the wrong choice here. Just because you know what's going to happen doesn't mean it's the wrong choice. And I would rather follow along with a well-written script that kind of gives you the obvious choice over a script that is trying to swerve you for the sake of swerving you and just throw something crazy in just to make you go, oh, I didn't expect that. And it winds up sacrificing the story. So that the twists, there are a couple things were added, but overall I think it was predictable. And I think the ending CGI. They did mostly practical in this. When there were moments of CGI, they cut away pretty quick. There were a couple of times toward the end of the film that it was evidently CGI, and it takes you briefly out of the moment. There are a couple of times when you're like, oh, I wish they would cut away a little faster. I wish they would have hidden the CGI a little better. Because the film is really tense and takes itself very seriously in a positive way and knows when to lighten up and knows when to use gore and when not to use gore. But some of the CGI at the end, they held on some of the shots too long where you go, oh, that looks kind of fake. And you still enjoy the movie and you're still along for the ride, but it does feel like, oh, I wish they had found a way to edit some things and cut around some things a little bit more so that you're not put into the obvious CGI for a little too long toward the end of the film, in my opinion. But all in all, I like the ending, I like the characters. So I would give this film a 7.5 out of 10. If you want a film that is kind of basic and kind of fun, but also has really layered characters, is shot really well, uses great sound design, is well-written dialogue, and fast-paced despite its runtime, I think you're going to enjoy this. The Invitation does not have great reviews online, and I don't know why. I think it's going to wind up being an underrated gem because it is simplistic, and I think people are going to look past it because it's not elevated, but I think that works in its favor. I think it's written very well, and I think if you give it a shot, you're going to enjoy it. Even for the stuff that you know is going to happen, it happens in a way that keeps it fun and keeps you invested the entire time. So I'm going to give this a 7.5 out of 10, and I'm not going to go into any more spoilers. Like I said, the film is fairly obvious. The trailer gives away too much, so if you can avoid the trailer before you go to see it, avoid the trailer. Nowadays, modern trailers are doing way too much. But that's my little soapbox. But yeah, 7.5 out of 10. I've got it top 5 so far in my horror calendar for this year. What do you guys think? If you've seen it, tell me in the comments down below if you like it or don't like it. When you watch it, please come back and comment on this video. Please like, share, and subscribe if you want to see more of these recent horror reviews. And I will come back soon. Stay scared, dim the lights, enjoy the movies, and I will talk to y'all soon.